Saltwater Orchard, Chapter 9. Ryan. Ryan wasn't sure what she'd been thinking. Well, she knew what she'd been thinking. She was thinking she was desperate and homeless and living in a barn with no electricity. She glanced at Richard walking confidently beside her toward the farmhouse. She was having a hard time making the memory she had of the little boy who had once dared her to climb to the top of the big pine tree behind the barn to this man. He seemed too sophisticated. How was he going to manage running an apple farm? When she'd first met Ricky, he was a shy little boy. Ryan had been full of life and loved getting dirty. She'd practically dragged him along with her. He'd soon learned to love the outdoors as much as she did. The older version of Ricky, the one she remembered from the last summer she'd seen him, had been adorable with his tousled hair and still shy grin. But this adult version? She couldn't get it to mesh. This version seemed too buttoned up, too professional, well, too cityfied. Ryan had to say something. The silence was feeling awkward. She needed to shake off the old memories and get to know this man, especially if she was going to work for him. I'm sorry to hear about your uncle. I have some wonderful memories of Mr. Carruthers. Thanks. Me too. I used to love spending summers here with him and Aunt Carol. He stopped walking and pivoted to face her. And you. I liked my summers with you, too. He turned back and pulled the door open before Ryan could react. She'd liked the summer she'd spent with him as well, but that had been a long time ago, and a lot had changed since then. She grabbed her daughter's hand as they followed him into the house. The fading light of the evening made it hard to see. She stayed close behind as Richard wove his way through the front room towards the kitchen at the back of the house. Her memories of running in and out of the kitchen to snag chocolate chip cookies hot out of the oven overwhelmed her. Those had been good times, now long gone. Hang on, and I'll get some light. Mommy, it's just like when Laura was alive. Ryan felt her daughter bouncing on her toes in excitement beside her. She wasn't sure how she'd ever convince Erica to go back to the barn tonight to sleep, especially if the little girl found out they would be moving into the house. Richard turned on 2 electric lanterns. Placing one in the center of the table, he hung the other one off a cabinet near a wood cookstove. It shouldn't take me long to get this started. We can heat the soup on here and take the chill off. Give me a second. He rummaged in a cabinet, muttering to himself. Aha! He held up a long lighter as he turned around. Now, let's see what we have for fuel. Fumbling in the wood box nearby, he pulled out a handful of kindling and began laying the wood in the stove. He clicked the lighter once, twice, and on the third time he exclaimed, There! He fanned the flame carefully with his hand until Ryan could see it growing from where she was standing across the room. I have made fire, Richard called out as he turned with a flourish, bowing as Erica began to laugh and clap. Ryan couldn't help but laugh along with her daughter. Well done, Robinson Crusoe. He chuckled as he replaced the cover on the opening in the stove. There are some pots and pans around here somewhere. I'm planning to make a run to town tomorrow to get cleaning supplies and whatever else we might need. Maybe we can make a list over supper. Ryan's stomach clenched with emotion as he spoke. The low lighting added to the intimacy of the moment, making her feel like they were on a date. But she knew better. She was just being fanciful. She hadn't seen Richard in 14 years. This wasn't a date or anything even resembling one. She needed to be practical and keep her emotions in check. You are going to get the electricity turned on, right? I mean, this is fun and all, but I don't think we'll be able to make much progress without it. Water would be good too. Ryan began opening the cupboards, looking for a pan to put the soup in. Top of my list for tomorrow. I'm just not sure how long it will take. Richard moved to the counter beside her and began unpacking the groceries he'd brought. He laid out bread, lunch meat, cheese, mayonnaise, and mustard. I have fixings for ham and cheese sandwiches. What kind of soup do you have? I don't know. I just grabbed the first can I saw. She picked up the can and held it closer to the light to read the label. Looks like I grabbed tomato. Do you have any butter? I can make some grilled cheese to go with them instead of ham sandwiches. Indeed I do. And I love grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, especially when I get to eat it with 2 pretty ladies. He winked at Ryan. She flushed. hoping the low lighting would hide it. It seemed she needed to make some more ground rules. She needed to make sure he understood exactly what it was she was offering. Turning and placing her hands on her hips, she began, "Look, let's make one thing clear." "Do you live here?" Erica interrupted as she wandered over to the large iron cook stove. The fire inside already had the place cozy. 2 doors flanked the stove, one leading to the attached shed and the other to the backyard. Ryan wondered if the screen door was still there to give a satisfying slap. It had done just that when she and Ricky had darted in for a quick snack or drink when they were younger. Richard didn't even glance at Ryan before walking over to Erica. "I do. My uncle used to live here, but he passed away. He left his house and farm to me." "I'm sorry your uncle died. My daddy died too." Ryan felt her heart break a little at her daughter's words. Erica rarely mentioned Eric. Her daughter had just been a baby when he died. She kept her back to her daughter and continued stirring the soup, waiting to hear what Richard would say next. "I'm sorry to hear that. It's hard when people we love die." "I never knew my daddy. He died right after I was born. But I still love him. Do you think he knows that?" Ryan caught her breath. Were these the things her daughter thought about? And why on earth was she talking like this with someone she'd just met? "I'm sure he does. I'm betting he knows what an awesome little girl he has." "You think so?" "Of course." Ryan felt a tear making its way down her cheek. She shrugged her shoulder to rub it away. Trying not to sniff, she started slathering butter on the bread to make the sandwiches. "I think I'm going to like living here." Erica's little voice gave away nothing. Ryan dared to take a quick glance over her shoulder to see if she could tell how Erica was doing. Instead, she caught Richard's eye. Whipping her head back around, she continued making the sandwiches. She didn't want him to know she'd been crying. She wasn't crying over Eric. He'd been gone too long. No, she was crying because life had left her to raise her daughter by herself. Clearing her throat, she called over her shoulder, "Dinner will be ready soon. Can you test your sugar, sweetie, or do you need my help?" "I can do it." Ryan hoped the dim lighting hid her feelings. She wasn't ready to deal with her past. Not yet. And maybe not ever. Richard had spent little time around children, but he liked Erica so far. She'd been very matter-of-fact about her father's death. He itched to know more. He wanted to know if the man's death was the reason Ryan was homeless and living in his uncle's barn. Walking back to where she stood at the stove, he asked quietly, "Can I help with anything?" She shook her head and didn't raise her eyes to him. He thought he caught a look of sadness when she glanced over her shoulder at her daughter a moment ago, but she turned away so fast he wasn't sure. Maybe she still loved her husband. Giving in to an impulse, she reached out and tipped her head back to see her face better. He saw her eyes widen in shock. He also saw the remnants of tears on her cheeks. It was obvious she still had deep feelings for her deceased husband. Maybe she wasn't over him after all. "I'm sorry," he whispered, releasing his hold on her. He pushed his hands into his pockets so he wouldn't give in to a second urge to wipe away the wetness on her cheeks. "It's okay. She was only a baby when he died. Ryan's breath hitched. "He never got to meet his daughter." He wanted to ask more questions, but she straightened and turned away. She busied herself with stirring the soup. His thoughts turned to Sloane. He wondered how she would act in Ryan's situation, but he realized how implausible that would be. Sloane had never gone without anything in her life. He knew Ryan couldn't say the same. "Can you bring this to the table?" Ryan pointed at the soup pan. "I'll grab the sandwiches." The two soon had everything situated. Richard pulled out a chair for her. "Here, the chef should have a place of honor." She chuckled. "Reserve that thought until you've eaten it. I'm no chef, but it should be edible." Considering I was going to have a cold sandwich, I'm thrilled already. I make a mean peanut butter and jelly, but that's it. "I love peanut butter and jelly," Erica cried and clapped her hands. "What's your favorite kind of jelly?" He laughed. "I've never thought about the answer to that question before." "Get used to those types of questions. She's full of them and has a never-ending supply." Ryan smiled at her daughter. "I love strawberry. My favorite is when Mommy makes it." Erica licked her lips. "It's so delicious. I could eat a whole jar all by myself." "You make your own jelly?" He raised an eyebrow at Ryan, a thought beginning to form. "When I have my own kitchen and the time, but I've had neither lately." "Mommy, don't forget my shot." Erica handed the meter to her mother to show her the number. She tested her own sugar while the two adults had been talking. "Right. Richard, would you mind praying? Then you can start eating while I get Erica situated." He hoped he kept the surprise off his face. Pray? He couldn't remember the last time he'd prayed. Maybe when he'd been sitting at this very table with his aunt and uncle. Yeah, sure. He was glad for the low light that hopefully hid his discomfort. He quickly mumbled something he hoped would pass muster, something he remembered his uncle saying before a meal. As soon as he said "Amen," he stuffed a bite of sandwich into his mouth and began to chew. He kept his head down over his food, acting as if he was concentrating on the meal, while glancing over at Ryan and her daughter. He saw her take a vial and a syringe, add some liquid from the vial to the syringe, and then inject her daughter. Erica never made her peep. Ryan wasn't the only strong one in her family. "I think my favorite might be strawberry too, Erica, but I think I need some of the jelly your mom makes, just to be sure." Richard winked at the little girl. She giggled and began eating her dinner. "Thank you for cooking, Ryan. I didn't mean to leave it all to you. I'm kind of capable of making food. Well, to be honest, I'm excellent at ordering food." Erica giggled again. "Ordering food isn't making food, silly." "It is for me." He winked at the little girl once more, who giggled. He turned to Ryan. "When we're done here, I'd like to give you a tour. I know it will be hard to see everything by lantern light, but it will give you an idea of the project." Erica's head bobbed back and forth between the two adults as they talked. Her eyes widened. "Are we going to live here, Mommy?" He gave Ryan a quick glance. "Did I say too much?" "No, it's okay." Turning to her daughter, she continued. "Yes, once Mr. Richard has the electricity turned back on, we're going to move in upstairs." "Do you have to turn on the electricity? Laura didn't have any. Please, can't you leave it off?" Erica clasped her hands under her chin and turned her wide, pleading eyes first to Ryan and then to Richard. He shot Ryan a look while he worked to contain his laughter. It was harder to do as she rolled her eyes at him before turning to answer her daughter. "Sweetie, you may want to live like Laura, but I certainly don't. I don't have time to bash our clothing on the rocks to clean them, or haul water, or sweep floors, or bake bread. Understand?" "Okay," Erica said, sadness creeping into her voice as she lowered her hands. "I guess you're right. But do you think we could make bread someday? I love your homemade bread, Mommy." Ryan chuckled. "Once we have a working oven, yes, we'll make bread." As he listened, more ideas began to form. For now, he would keep them to himself, but he was seeing a way to make this farm thing work. He just needed to figure out a way to convince Ryan to help him. Chapter 10. Ryan. Ryan smiled as she stretched. Sunlight was streaming through the window, warming the spot where she lay. Erica, who was snoring slightly, was curled into her side. She tucked an arm around her, pulling her daughter closer. Her thoughts drifted back to the evening before. Dinner had been, well, interesting seemed to be the right word. She liked the man she was getting to know. She was seeing glimpses of the boy she remembered. Richard had been a gentleman throughout the evening, even when he'd found her crying while she stirred the soup. Her stomach flipped as she remembered how he lifted her chin. His brown eyes had looked warm and deep in the low light of the lantern. He had given her such a look of caring. It made her realize just how much she missed having someone around who was concerned about her. All her focus went to Erica. It was nice, for a moment, to have someone do the same for her, someone she'd missed since losing Eric. Eric. Memories of her late husband flooded back to her. She'd kept the thoughts at bay for too long. Grief had consumed her in the beginning, and then Erica had arrived. Ryan's only thought after the birth of her daughter was survival, especially in those first few months. She turned her head on the pillow to study her daughter, who was her greatest treasure. It had been hard to raise Erica on her own, but she never regretted having her. She let her thoughts drift back, working to pick out the memories that brought her the most joy of when she'd been with Eric. One night at a party, she'd met him. Despite being out of high school for a couple of years, she was still living at home and taking community college classes nearby, while she saved to go to Bowdoin. Except the more time passed, the more her dreams seemed to slip further away. It was the reason she'd let her friend talk her into going to the beach party. It was something she wouldn't have done normally, but she was realizing the longer it took her to go to college, the more likely it would never happen. And then Eric Jordan had walked into her life. The moment she'd laid eyes on him, he'd captivated her. He was the center of attention, familiar with everyone at the party, except her. 2 years her senior at 24, he was home on leave from the Army. Even now, Ryan could remember how she'd blushed when she saw him standing there with his toned muscles, his short crew cut, and his laugh. Oh, how she'd loved his laugh. It was one that was full of confidence. He'd known who he was, and it oozed from him, infecting all those around him with joy. Ryan had known who she was when she'd been with him, and she missed that. She missed him so much. "Mommy, are we moving into the house today?" Erica still had her eyes closed as she mumbled the words. As Ryan had known, getting Erica to sleep last night had been harder than normal. The little girl had been too excited about living the Laura life, as she called it. Now that she knew they would soon move into the house, she was even more excited. "Not today, but soon. Let's get you up and ready for school. Okay, kiddo?" "Okay." Erica let out a yawn and stretched, finally opening her eyes. "Mommy?" "What, sweetie?" she asked as she rolled out of bed. She slept in sweatpants and a sweatshirt for an extra layer of warmth, although the nights were getting warmer. Spring was finally here. All the same, she was almost as excited as Erica to be moving into a house, even if it meant they would live with Richard right downstairs. She didn't want to think about the feelings that thought brought now. "Do you miss Daddy?" And that question stopped any thought she had of what Richard might look like in the morning. She caught her breath. She hadn't realized until last night how much Erica missed her father. While she thought she'd done a good job being both mother and father to her little girl, it was obviously not enough. "I do, honey, so much." She sat back on the bed next to her daughter, reaching out to stroke her hair. "Me too." "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry your daddy isn't here with you. He would have loved you so much." She gave Erica a tight hug, holding back the tears that seemed to hover just below the surface too often of late. Taking a deep breath, she gave her daughter one last tight squeeze before releasing her. "You know, you can ask me anything you want about Daddy, right? You can talk about him any time." "Okay, Mommy, I gotta use the privy." Erica scrambled over Ryan, jamming her feet into a pair of bright pink Crocs. The little girl hurried from the room. She held back the laughter, trying to bubble out. Erica kept adding words she learned from the Little House books to her vocabulary. Kids were far more resilient than adults, it seemed. While she wanted to curl back up in bed and cry about all she missed about being a wife, her daughter seemed to move forward at light speed. Ryan went to heat water for coffee and oatmeal. Last night, Richard had graciously offered to drive Erica to school and take her to the garage to see about someone coming out to get her car. She hoped the issue was minor. Relying on him too much too soon went against her nature. She valued the independence of having her own vehicle too much to give it up easily. She had today off from the cafe, and it looked like she was going to spend most of it with Richard. Her stomach gave a little flip at his name, but she shoved the feeling down. She needed to keep this professional. This man wasn't the same as her childhood friend. He'd grown up, and so had she. They'd changed, and she needed to remember that. Ryan stood in the middle of the living room, making notes on what needed to be done. Every room she'd examined closer since getting back from town was so full of stuff. She'd known the house had seemed packed last night when Richard had given her a tour, but the lantern light had hidden the corners. Richard was outside checking on the trees while she worked in here. If the outside looked anything like it did in the house, they had their work cut out for them. Everything was neatly in place inside, but there was just so much of it. Every cabinet she'd opened had been so full, she didn't think a beetle would have fit. Each closet was the same. Every available spot that could hold something did so, and then some. She wasn't sure how she would ever get it all sorted before the end of the year, let alone the end of the summer. She wondered how Richard would feel about renting a dumpster and just tossing everything. "Do you want to see the upstairs again?" She jumped as she turned to see him standing behind her. She swatted at his arm with her notebook. "You scared me. I didn't hear you come in." Smiling, he dodged the blow. "Sorry. I thought you might want to tackle upstairs first so you and Erica can move in. Plus, there isn't as much up there. At least it didn't look like it." Ryan started towards the stairs. "Sure, let's go." Not waiting for an answer, she headed up the narrow staircase at the front of the house. She heard him as he hurried across the room to join her. She glanced back at him as she neared the top of the stairs. "When is your deadline again? Because I don't know how we're going to get all this done. There's a lot of stuff here." As she went to take the last step up, her foot tangled in the runner. She lost her balance and felt herself falling backward. "Oh!" She scrambled to grab the banister. Suddenly, a pair of powerful hands gripped her waist. "Hold on. I've got you." She clutched the banister with one hand, and the other found its way to one of Richard's on her waist. "Thanks," she breathed out, working to slow her racing heart. She told herself her heart was beating fast because of the adrenaline, and not because he had caught her. "My pleasure." She wanted to stay where she was, held up by this strong man, but she took a quick step forward. She was heading into dangerous territory and needed to regroup. Her focus needed to be on Erica, not having a man in her life. It was the reason she'd never dated after losing Eric. While she yearned to have someone to share life with, she wouldn't date until her daughter was older. She'd vowed to herself not to bring different men into her daughter's life, only to have them leave when things didn't work out between them. She didn't want that for her daughter, or for herself for that matter. No, she wanted a man who would stay. "Hey, I was wondering if I could add on to our agreement," Richard asked. She felt her face flush at his gaze. She needed to remember this was Richard, not Ricky. Maybe this was a bad idea. If he had this much effect on her now, what would it be like by the time they finished renovating the house? "I'll leave today," she made to move past him. He held out his hands. "Hear me out." "No, you hear me out." She poked a finger into his chest and tried not to think about how solid it felt. "The agreement was for me to help you hoe this place out. No more, no less. I'm not that kind of girl. Seriously." She felt her anger growing. So much for thinking she knew this man, since they had a shared past. "Ryan, I want you to cook. That's it," he called after her as she started down the stairs. "What kind of man do you take me for, anyway?" She stopped mid-stride, halfway down the stairs. "Cook? You want me to cook?" She looked back at him in confusion. "I'm just asking if you'll be willing to do some cooking, in addition to the rest. It doesn't have to be every night, but I'm hoping when you're here, you'll take pity on me and make food. I really am hopeless in the kitchen. Maybe you could even teach me some basics?" "Oh." She slowly walked back upstairs, careful not to trip again, since he wasn't behind her. She'd overreacted. Great. "Yeah, I could do that, sure." Taking a deep breath, she let it out slowly, along with the anger. "Great. Now he's really going to think I'm a nut job. Sorry. I want you to know I would never take advantage of you, Ryan." She glanced up at him and saw the sincerity in his eyes. Nodding her head, she turned and started down the hallway. Maybe it was time for her to learn to trust again.